Chapter 51, Liang Mengkai visited the Mount New Moon. Oh yeah, Mengkai, I love you so much. Zhao Du gave Liang Mengkai a big thumbs up. Look at you, you slut. You said to clean up, hurry up and clean up the dining table. Liang Mengkai rolled his eyes and said, understood. Zhao Du saluted and went to clean up the table complacently. If this had happened in the past, he would never have imagined that one day he would have to clean up after eating in the dining hall. However, the key point was that he was actually so happy and excited. What a little slut. Yu Qingqing glanced at Zhao Du and scolded him with a smile. Qingqing, let's go take a look at the boss's kitchen. He told me that in the future, not only are there egg fried rice, there will be more delicious food. When we go shopping in a while, we can't just buy electric cookers. Liang Mengkai said as he pulled Yu Qingqing towards the kitchen. That's right, that's right. Let's go take a look. Yu Qingqing and Liang Mengkai went into the kitchen to take a look. The frying pan is a bit small. Yes, it's small, and one is not enough. Aren't the two stoves? Let's throw this wok away and buy two big ones. And electric cookers. Yes. The most important thing is the electric cooker. There's also a steamer. How much food can be steamed in such a small amount? No, I have to change it. Change the oven too. Are we going to buy some special tableware as well? Every time we use paper cups, paper plates and disposable chopsticks, spoons, we feel awkward. You're right. Buy one set each time. At worst, we can just clean up our own dishes in the future. The two stayed in the kitchen for a while, until Zhao Du finished tidying up the table and threw the trash out. After that, he walked to the kitchen and looked at the kitchen utensils on the counter. Throw it away. The two ladies spoke without turning their heads. Zhao Du immediately reacted and joined the battle. The three of them took these brand new electric cookers, ovens and other utensils and he threw it outside by the trash can. It looked like the staff who were cleaning up the trash would be able to reap some rewards today. At the same time, at Xuanhuan's house, why hasn't there been a reply yet? Li Fan's notebook showed his mailbox. He pressed his left finger on the F5 refresh button and refreshed it every 10 seconds, waiting for Han Yang's reply. Don't worry, it's normal not to be here during the day. We'll check the news later. Xuanhuan was lying on the sofa and reading the lyrics. Seeing Li Fan's appearance, he shook his head. This guy, he was so excited when he saw a good song. He refreshed his mailbox for 2 hours in front of his computer, expecting Han Yang to answer. Now that you have something to do, you can study the song. As for me, I'm in a hurry to finish discussing this song. Li Fan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, this was bound to be a useless action, because Zhang Han did not have the habit of using Penguin software every day. In fact, he had not done it even once a few years ago. 2 hours later, Zhang Han walked down in an orderly fashion while carrying Meng Meng. When Zhang Han saw that all of the kitchens had been changed to large cooking utensils, he could not help but pause for a moment. You guys really bought a lot? Zhang Han said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Of course, boss. Since you've given me the chance, of course we should cherish it, hee hee. Liang Mengkai laughed and said, boss, I saw that there is a space on the left side of the tableware cabinet, so we placed all three of us inside. The tableware is covered with names. We will use the normal tableware, and then we will go back and wash the dishes ourselves. Yes. Zhang Han nodded slightly. Meng Meng also needs to wash the dishes himself. Meng Meng said with her childish voice. Meng Meng is the little princess. Zhang Han's expression turned serious, and said, you don't have to do this kind of thing anytime, you just have to properly enjoy life with daddy. Okay. Meng Meng cutely nodded her head. Boss, where are you going? Liang Mengkai asked curiously when he saw Zhang Han walking out. Go out and come back in 2 or 3 hours. Zhang Han said as he looked at them. Liang Mengkai was using his phone to watch TV while Yu Qingqing and Zhao Du were playing games in the dark. From the looks of it, they were planning to spend the afternoon in the dining hall. Bring me I don't want to be a light bulb here either. Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up. PFFT, what electric light bulb? Yu Qingqing stared blankly at her, and said sinisterly, I think that some talents have impure goals and want to follow along. My bad friend. Liang Mengkai let out a light snort, and did not turn back as he looked at Zhang Han with some anticipation. Then come. Zhang Han nodded and walked out. He planned to go to the Mount New Moon to harvest some wheat. After all, he couldn't possibly give Meng rice every day. Furthermore, the vegetables that he had grown should be ripe by now. Zhang Han planned to make 2 regular dishes for Meng to eat tonight. Where are we going? Liang Mengkai and Meng sat in the back seat, and when the car started, Liang Mengkai could not help but ask, Mount New Moon. Zhang Han replied, oh. Liang Mengkai nodded. She did not continue asking, but Meng could not help but flaunt his skills. Little big sister, Mount New Moon is. The papa gave Meng a paradise. Yeah? Liang Mengkai smiled. The dimples on her face made her smile look very sweet, and she laughed. Then Mount New Moon must be very beautiful. It's nice to look at, but it's really pretty. Mount New Moon has it. There were many dogs, a large tree, many small houses, water, flowers, grass, cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens, ducks, geese, and papa, what else is there? Meng thought about the area where they grew rice. He wanted to express but he didn't know what to say, so he could only seek help from the papa, and ponds, and crops and vegetables. Zhang Han added with a smile. Wow, according to Meng, that place is truly a paradise. Liang Mengkai felt that this was great. Yes, her heart had already used the word greatness to describe it. With so many things, just thinking about it would be quite troublesome. But she's beautiful. Meng said with a proud and childish voice. However, if they couldn't see it with their own eyes, they would definitely not know the beauty of the Mount New Moon. When Liang Mengkai reached the Mount New Moon, Liang Mengkai was stunned. This is truly a paradise. Boss, how did you build this place? Isn't it too beautiful? It feels like even the air is fragrant. This is unbelievable. Oh my god. A rose? Zhang Han had already anticipated Liang Mengkai's performance, so as she walked towards the back of the mountain, she kept chattering and sighing. As for the little princess who was in Zhang Han's embrace, her expression revealed pride and pride. The Mount New Moon was specially made for Meng. So many dogs. When Liang Mengkai saw the dozens of dogs playing in the grass, his eyes turned green. Many people liked furry pets like cats and dogs, but there weren't many that were raised. After all, pets would lose their fur, and going to the toilet in the house was very troublesome. Although he could clean up, the house would have a bad smell after a long time. This situation could only be improved when the dog was older. They knew that they couldn't use the toilet in the house before going to look for their owner. If all the pets were like the ones that Zhang Han had, without any germs or odors, and still hadn't shed hair, then the number of pets would probably skyrocket. When Lil Black saw that Zhang had arrived, it ran over aggressively. When Lil Black saw that there was an outsider present, it subconsciously wanted to act cool. Ow! Just as it was about to call out, it saw that it was a girl. Xiao Hai unexpectedly spoke out in confusion, its eyes staring straight at Zhang Han and Liang Mengkai, not knowing what was going on. Could it be that the beauty from before wasn't the mistress? Why did another beauty come in a few days? It was so chaotic. Is this an ironclad golden dog? She's so beautiful. Liang Mengkai exclaimed. No, number. It's called Little Black. It's the Iron Bag Golden Emperor dog. Meng corrected himself. Oh, hello, Little Black. Liang Mengkai smiled and greeted her. Woo. Blackie responded in a gentle manner. You guys stay here for a while, I'm going to work. Zhang Han said as he walked towards wheat with the sickle in hand. Liang Mengkai had initially looked at Meng and Little Black playing, but when she saw Little Black's fangs, She felt a little fearful and apprehensive. She did not expect that Little Black would actually be so obedient when facing Meng Meng. However, Liang Mengkai was still a little confused when he saw that Little Black's fur would often stick close to his face. After playing for an hour, Zhang Han finished harvesting half of the wheat field and stopped to trap the wheat in bundles. At this time, Liang Mengkai walked over and asked curiously, "Boss, Meng Meng is a little too close to the dog. She's still young, so her immunity is not high, she shouldn't." Before Liang Mengkai could finish speaking, Zhang Han shook his head and interrupted him, "It's alright, the pets here don't have those germs." Liang Mengkai's expression froze. Although she could not believe it in her heart, she did not say anything else. Her gaze carefully sized up the surrounding crops, and said with a face full of praise, "You really planted so many things. Meng Meng is so happy. You grow it yourself, only then will you be able to eat well." Zhang Han got a piece of wheat as he spoke and walked to the vegetable area. He picked some beans, dug up a few potatoes, and picked 2 tomatoes and a few eggplants. "Wow! Do we have other delicacies for dinner?" Liang Mengkai couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva when he saw Zhang Han's actions and the sound of egg fried rice. "It's Meng Meng and I." Zhang Han replied indifferently, "Huh?" Liang Mengkai was startled at first, but after that he grinded his teeth in anger and snorted loudly. Arriving at the foot of the mountain, Liang Mengkai and Meng Meng waited in the car. Zhang Han walked back and forth a few times before he finally took down the wheat. "Meng Meng, I really envy you for having such an outstanding father." Before entering the room, Liang Mengkai could not help but sigh once more. Chapter 52, Household Dish. Her words made the little princess incomparably happy. She would only be happy if Papa was powerful. But of course it would be better if she was praised a little. We'll be going this way for 3 hours. Mengkai, say, did you seduce our boss? Yu King said as his mouth twitched. Don't talk nonsense. Do you think everyone is as dirty as you? The boss is an upright person. HMPH. Liang Mengkai let out a light snort, driving away Zhao Du, who was sitting opposite to him, and sat on the chair himself. HMPH. Bullying. Zhao Du also snorted lightly. King, let me tell you, the boss made a mountain. It's so beautiful there. After he sat down, Liang Mengkai excitedly chatted with Yu King about everything he had seen and heard in the mountain new moon today. Zhang Han ignored their teasing and carried Meng Meng to the sofa instead. Meng Meng, watch the TV for a while. Daddy is going to start cooking. Zhang Han looked at the time. It was already 5:30, and it would take about an hour to cook a few dishes. Okay. Meng Meng wants to see a cartoon. Meng Meng replied with her childish voice. Zhang Han used the remote control to turn on the television, called out the children's channel, and then walked into the kitchen with a bag in his hand. First, he placed the 2 large bags of flour into the storage cabinet. When he turned around and saw the exceptionally large electric cooker, oven and other completely new products on the storage cabinet, the corner of Zhang Han's mouth slightly twitched a few times. Looks like I've underestimated the word gluttonous after all. Zhang Han found it funny, these kitchen utensils were not cheap. Zhang Han also did not think that the 3 foodies would change into large-capacity kitchen utensils so quickly. The capacity of electric cooker is 18 liter. How much is 18 liter? You may not know this, but an electric cooker with 18 liters of rice can cook 28 cups of rice. A rice cooker with its own rice measuring cup, a flat cup of rice waiting for rain, 3 or 2 meters, 3 or almost 3 bowls of rice. According to the calculation of 2 or 2 meters per person, it can cook the rice for 42 people. The calculation of 3 or 2 meters per person can cook the rice for 28 people. And the calculation of half a kilogram per person can satisfy 17 people. You can see how big the rice cooker is from here. Zhang Han slightly shook his head, washed the rice, and started to boil it in 7 cups. He first laid the eggs aside, then began to gather the beans, potatoes, eggplant and tomatoes. After finishing his preparations, Zhang Han picked up the manuals for each product and quickly flipped through them. The prices of the kitchen utensils were not low. From this, it could be seen that the three people had some assets. Needless to say, Liang Mengkai already knew from her conversation with her brother that she was a disciple of a genuine big family, and also the most expensive out of the three. Yu Qingqing was second. She was the genuine black belt taekwondo, and worked at taekwondo. Her weekly working hours were only on Saturday and Sunday for 2 days, and her monthly salary was more than 200,000. Zhao Du was slightly weaker than the other three. He was the deputy director of a media company, and his annual salary was around 1.3 million. They did not lack money, but that did not mean that they would spend it randomly. They usually did not eat and play extravagantly, and Yu Qingqing's car at the door was a Matang which was worth more than 200,000. At this moment, in front of the restaurant, the Land Cruiser that arrived at noon slowly stopped in front of the parking space. Bam! Zhao Feng got off the car, closed the door, and threw away the cigarette in his hand. He then looked at the signboard in front of the restaurant with a deep gaze, and walked inside. When it was time for dinner, Zhao Feng drove out of the company alone, and prepared to find a restaurant to eat. While driving, he thought about something, and unknowingly, he arrived at Zhang Han's restaurant. Zhao Feng was startled by the side of the road, but since he was already here, he decided to take care of it. He knew that he came here because Zhang Han gave him a lot of pressure at noon. He felt that Zhang Han was not an ordinary person, and besides being curious, he also wanted to taste what the 280 yuan of egg fried rice looked like. When he walked into the dining room, Liang Mengkai, who was in the middle of chatting, stopped talking. "What are you doing here again? Let me tell you, this is a legal society, and the friend in front of me is an expert of the black belt of taekwondo. If you come here to cause trouble, my friend will help." Zhao Feng was slightly stunned, then looked at Liang Mengkai with a funny-looking look. This girl with a sense of justice and courage had given him a good impression, so Zhao Feng smiled slightly, shook his head and said, "I'm here to eat, not to cause trouble." "Humphrey, then let me warn you, you have to be honest here, or else I'll show you." Liang Mengkai snorted lightly and sat back down. Zhao Feng laughed and walked in, and then sat down in the most innermost chair, and quietly waited there, only that his eyes would occasionally size up Zhang Han. Zhang Han was boiling the milk, looking like a normal restaurant owner. However, Zhao Feng was very clear that the owner of the restaurant would probably take him down in less than a minute. The pressure that he felt from the owner's body was even more intense than his own party leader previously. Back then, he was able to hold on for nearly 2 minutes in the captain's palm. However, what he did not know was that if Zhang Han wanted to take him down, a single move would be enough. Although Zhang Han saw the chi refining stage as trash, but don't forget that he saw it as the perspective of a tribulation expert. In other words, if the chi refining stage was placed in a martial forest, it would count as an inner strength expert. What was the level of inner strength? The obvious strength, hidden strength, would only produce inner strength later on, which was also spirit energy. But Zhao Feng, right now, couldn't even be considered as obvious strength. As Zhao Feng stared at himself, he realized something as well. It was just that he never cared about the look of an ant. If Zhang Han still had the personality of a young master in the past, he would probably fight in all 4 directions to become a true monarch that ruled the world if he gained the ability to cultivate. But after experiencing such hardships, with the return of his past life and the presence of Meng, Zhang Han had become even more casual. After he had raised his strength, he would settle the matter of his parents' disappearance, share his family's joy, and bring them to the Mount New Moon. He would also have a bland and happy life. After the milk was boiled, Zhang Han placed the pot on the counter. Immediately, a rich aroma wafted into the room. Although Liang Mengkai and the other 2 had drank before, they still took a whiff in an intoxicated manner. And Zhao Feng, who had never experienced such a scent before, was actually somewhat surprised. "This taste, it seems pretty good." Zhao Feng muttered to himself, Papa, Meng is hungry." After smelling the fragrance, Meng also felt hungry. She turned around and said to Zhang Han, Meng wants to drink a cup of milk." "Not now. The milk is very hot. There's only half an hour left to eat. Let's wait for a little while longer. Zhang Han chuckled. Ugh, fine, fine. Meng pouted and replied. He no longer watched TV and stepped on the sofa barefooted with his arms on the back. He raised his head and looked at the busy Zhang Han. On Zhang Han's side, it was obvious that he was speeding up. He took the onion with his left hand and drew a Chinese kitchen knife from the knife holder with his right. Originally, Zhang Han only had a few household knives, but after going through Liang Mengkai and the others' shopping, he had truly gotten a complete set of kitchen utensils, such as deboning knives, fish knife, beef knife, skin knife and so on. He had a total of more than 20 tools, and he even had all sorts of tools to cook dishes. But Zhang Han did not know much about the uses of the kitchen knives, so he could only use Chinese-style kitchen knives. The Chinese kitchen knife is made of high-carbon steel, with a sharp blade and wooden handle. It can cut and chop all kinds of ingredients. Western chefs use it to do heavy chopping work, but skilled Chinese chefs can use it to do almost all the work. Bang, bang, bang. A burst of hurried muffled sound came out. Other than Zhao Feng, who was staring straight at him, Liang Mengkai and the other two also turned their heads to look, only to see a flash of blade light, giving off a dreamy feeling. In 2 seconds, a whole blade of green onion had been neatly sliced into two. The speed at which it was cut was hard to imagine. After cutting the green onions, Zhang Han turned the kitchen knife in his hand and placed it back on the knife holder. He then casually took out a skinning knife that Zhang Han recognized. This action stunned Meng's eyes. She said with incomparable adoration, "Wow, Papa, so powerful." This sentence was precisely the only thought in the hearts of Zhao Feng, Liang Mengkai, Yu Qingqing and Zhao Du. So handsome. The two women thought to themselves. So cool, I should have practiced it. Zhao Du looked at her enviously. It's a blade-wielding expert. Only Zhao Feng's gaze was deeper. The way he saw it was different from the others. He could see an expert's chi from Zhang Han's blade, not to mention anything else. If he used this blade technique on the opponent, he would feel that he would not be able to last half a minute under Zhang Han's hand. As for Zhang Han, when he heard the little princess praise, he did not answer nor turn his head. Instead, the corners of his mouth rose to form a smile. His left hand was holding a potato while his right hand was using a paring knife to rapidly move back and forth. Little by little, the potato skin was being removed. In just a few breaths of time, Zhang Han had completely removed the potato skin, and quickly tidied up the beans, eggplants, and tomatoes. He took out a frying pan and put the oil in it. Then, he boiled the beans for a while and put the potatoes in it again. After a while, he added in the smoked octagon, 13 incense sticks, and a little white sugar. By brewing the fire into a small flame, about 20 minutes worth of salt, onion, garlic, and fragrant wood would be ready for cooking. Zhang Han's set. His movements were fluid and smooth, giving off a very comfortable feeling. It was a type of visual enjoyment. After doing all this, Zhang Han wiped his hands, took off his apron and hung it on the side of the kitchen, then walked over to Meng's side and sat down. "Papa, you're so powerful." Zhang Han sat, while Meng stood, just enough to reach Zhang Han's face. The little princess hugged Zhang Han's neck and brought her cherry lips over. "What?" After kissing a few times, Zhang Han laughed heartily and started to play with Meng. "That's great." Liang Mengkai muttered with a slightly envious tone. "Meng is so happy." Yu Qingqing muttered. "How warm it is. I also want a daughter now." "Qingqing, why don't we?" Zhao Du had not finished speaking. Scram. Chapter 53, Eye Drops. "I don't know when I'll be able to live like this." Zhao Feng was a little absent-minded, and his eyes were also somewhat envious as he looked at Zhang Han and Meng. He had spent these past 2 years fighting non-stop. The reason for his nickname was because he had used a lot of people's blood to beat this madman up. At the same time, it was unavoidable for Zhao Feng to have met powerful opponents, and received heavy injuries. However, he still got up, relying on his ruthlessness. There was a reason for people to be unsteady. especially in the underground world. It was a saying of truth. However, there were only a few who were truly ruthless, and Zhao Feng did not like fighting or killing. After seeing Zhang Han at this moment, the yearning for a peaceful life surfaced in his heart. Soon, when I settle the matter with Tang Zan, I can relax. Finding a wife and having a child, my life in the city, like how the boss lives, is really good. Zhao Feng muttered in his heart, and when he thought of the word girlfriend, Zhao Feng's gaze subconsciously turned to Liang Mengkai. He had oval face, big eyes, long hair, a kind heart, a cheerful personality, and a scholarly style. But facing a brave and courageous girl, all of these conditions were the type that Zhao Feng liked. If it weren't for Tang Zan, Zhao Feng reckoned that he would not be able to resist chasing after him. But not now. Tang Zan had already noticed that anyone who followed him would be in danger. Therefore, at this time, Zhao Feng did not plan to consider these private matters. Liang Mengkai seemed to have also felt Zhao Feng's gaze. He turned his head to take a glance and realized that was really staring at him. "What are you looking at?" Liang Mengkai glared at Zhao Feng and turned back to continue watching the playful Meng Meng and Zhang Han. To her, the one who had attracted her at the start was Meng Meng. Meng Meng was too adorable. Anyone who saw her would have a good impression of her. Gradually, she realized that Zhang Han's allure was increasing. He was very casual, he had a good personality, he never bothered with anyone, but only had his daughter in his eyes. He was very mysterious, his culinary arts were high, the piano played so well, but she had never heard of him, and furthermore, Zhang Han's appearance was not bad, and the more she looked, the more handsome he seemed. The more handsome he was, the more powerful he would become. "Papa, that blade of yours, how fast is it?" Meng Meng laid in the papa's embrace and asked. "It's because Meng Meng is hungry, so daddy has to do it a little faster." Zhang Han chuckled, and kissed Meng Meng's pink cheeks. "Papa, you are so nice, you are my great hero." Meng Meng said happily. "Of course, daddy is going to be your hero for life." Zhang Han said softly. "Ugh." Meng Meng pouted as she thought about it. She felt that she was missing something. She suddenly remembered, and anxiously said, "Also Mama, Papa is also a hero, he wants to be a hero for the rest of his life." Zhang Han's expression froze, he rubbed Meng Meng's little head and said with a smile, "Okay, whatever Meng Meng says, Daddy will listen to Meng Meng." He. "Papa, are you alright?" "Oh my." Overjoyed, Meng Meng gave her a kiss on her cheek. This scene caused the people sitting at the side of the door to feel envy and disappointment in their hearts. They envied Meng Meng for having such a powerful father. The most important thing was that this father loved her so much, indulged her so much, spoiled her so much, and from his attitude, it seemed like he wanted to take care of his daughter till the heavens. They were disappointed, not because their relationship with their father was not that good, but because they had grown up, and could no longer cuddle in their father's embrace and act shamelessly like Meng Meng. Furthermore, their father was also getting older and older. Zhao Feng no longer had any parents, but he was the most disappointed one present. The tree wants peace but the wind does not stop. The child wants to raise but does not stay. Zhao Feng had not done his duty, and his family had already passed away. This was his greatest regret. Time flew by quickly. After about 10 minutes, Zhang Han showed Meng Meng the small set to the kitchen and started working. As for Meng Meng, he did not even want to watch TV anymore. He just sat on the sofa and hummed a song as he watched Papa cook. At this time, the rice was already cooked. Zhang Han turned on the electric cooker and looked at the amount of rice inside it, which had doubled from yesterday. The energy of a foodie is very scary. Zhang Han helplessly shook his head, and moved the rice together, reminding everyone here that they should not eat the rice that was cooked directly. After going through the experiments of an expert from the Agricultural Academy of Sciences, no matter if it was in the city or the countryside, whether it was a big iron pot, electric cooker or a rice steamer, they should not eat the rice directly, because eating the rice directly hot mouth when the rice was cooked, it could be eaten directly. However, it would be better if it was cold. Moreover, if the rice was stirred, it would maintain a good softness. If the rice was not stirred, the moisture loss would become more real after a while. The potato stew with beans was still around 10 minutes away, just as Zhang Han was about to start his second course. Red braised eggplant. Braised eggplant is a traditional dish with a long history. It is a fine vegetable dish. Juice was the common food. However, it was a simple task for Zhang Han. In other words, making a full-eaten new moon base eggplant would not be difficult either. The blade light flashed again, and 3 eggplants were cut into long segments that had the same shape and size. When he placed them in the steamer to steam, Zhang Han cut the garlic into minced garlic. After the eggplant was steamed and cooked, it cooled down for a moment. Then the oil was poured into the pot and put into the eggplant, garlic, red pepper, old smoked, spring onion, salt, a little sugar and the most important fragrant wood. After stir-frying for a while, a portion of red braised eggplant was served. Thereafter, Zhang Tan's hands did not stop moving. 2 pots were placed in front of him, and 2/3 of the rice was turned into egg-fried rice. "Come and serve us some rice." Zhang Han placed Liang Mengkai and the other 2 dishes on the counter and waved at Liang Mengkai. "All right." Liang Mengkai laughed and took the lead to walk in front of the counter. As he was filling up the rice, Liang Mengkai's eyes landed on the dishes that Zhang Han had cooked. The food did not have the absorption from the smoke blender, so the fragrance of the dishes wafted up, causing Liang Mengkai to subconsciously swallow his saliva. "It smells so good, it must be delicious." However, after the food was cooked, Yu Qingqing pushed her away in a hurry, bringing her consciousness back to reality. Liang Mengkai stepped aside and carried the lonely egg-fried rice and milk back to the guests' small dining table. Zhao Feng stood behind the counter and waited for them to finish eating. Then, he used a paper plate and a paper cup to fill up the egg-fried rice and milk. Smelling the fragrance, Zhao Feng felt that this fragrance was very strong, thus his footsteps could not help but speed up by 30%. When he returned to his seat, he hastily scooped rice into a spoon and put it into his mouth. After tasting the taste, 10,000 bullet screens worth of food quickly floated past his heart. Egg-fried rice? Apostrophe. I don't believe it. Apostrophe. When did the egg-fried rice become so delicious? Apostrophe. Is this real egg-fried rice? Apostrophe. Is this really egg-fried rice? Apostrophe. After eating the first mouthful, Zhao Feng was unable to stop. One had to know that for someone like him, who was a spy, his endurance was extremely terrifying. However, this kind of endurance seemed to become extremely laughable in front of a plate of egg-fried rice. One could tell from his blurry eyes that he had been conquered by Zhang Han's egg-fried rice. But it was not only him. Liang Mengkai, Yu Qingqing, Zhao Du had also eaten very fast. Seeing this scene, the little princess started to panic. "Papa, Papa, they're already starting to eat. Why aren't we eating?" Meng pouted and said, after smelling the fragrance for a long time, she was so hungry that she couldn't take it anymore. "All right. The last dish will be served." Zhang Han smiled and poured the last piece of fried egg and tomato into the plate. "Let's go and eat too." Zhang Han immediately used a large tray to bring the 3 dishes, 2 bowls of rice and 2 chopsticks to the table. "Time to eat, time to eat." Meng ran and jumped around beside Zhang Han happily. At this time, other than Zhao Du, the other 3 people had finished eating their egg-fried rice. "It smells so good. The papa is truly a nuisance. It tastes so good." Meng bit a braised eggplant and praised. "Then eat more." Zhang Han did not touch the chopsticks, and said gently while smiling at Meng. Fatherly love was like a mountain. Every father's way of expressing their love was different. They wouldn't say such exquisite words of love, and most of them would silently use their actions to explain their father's love. For example, Zhang Han hadn't said anything to Meng like "I love you," but his actions had proven his love for Meng, and when he said "eat more," many parents had said similar words. At this moment, Liang Mengkai looked at Zhang Han with eager eyes. How she wished that Zhang Han would also say this to her, "Come and eat a little too." But no. Liang Mengkai was already impatient in his heart. Since you are not saying anything, then this person will say hello, right? Therefore, she licked her lips and endured the embarrassment in her heart, saying, boss. Can you? I also want to taste the food you cooked. Swish. In that moment, the other three gazes turned towards Zhang Han. They didn't even need to say anything as they expressed their desire with their gazes. Zhang Han's expression froze for a moment, then he muttered to himself and answered, "Not everyone can eat dishes that I, Zhang Han, cook." The rules could not be broken easily. Zhang Han did not doubt the popularity of his restaurant. Eating just one dish would leave one loyal fan behind. Moreover, it had only been open for 2 days. If it started for too long, the number of customers would rise quickly. It was fine to cook a lot of food like egg fried rice, but did Zhang Han really have to cook for everyone? Impossible. Even for the people in front of him, to be able to eat egg fried rice was all thanks to Meng Meng. If it was not for the fact that the Mount New Moon was still in the early stages of transformation and was unable to create a residential area, this restaurant would not even be open. Thus Zhang Han did not plan to cook for others. Chapter 54, Expensive Restaurant Membership Card. Liang Mengkai didn't mind after hearing this. A rare flirtatious and bashful expression surfaced on her face as she pleaded in a pleading tone. I'm begging you, can you just eat a little bit? You two won't be able to eat. It's a waste even if you leave it. Just eat a little. I'm your loyal fan. I am also a loyal fan. Boss, you better not pull me down. Yu King quickly agreed. He's also the boss's brother's loyal fan. Zhao Du said in a somewhat anxious tone. Cough cough. Zhao Feng coughed lightly, as if he had not expected such a day to come. He replied in a very soft voice, I think so too. No way. Zhang Han's attitude was still firm. Seeing that Zhang Han had rejected them, Zhao Feng was slightly better. The three of them were a little disappointed and sad. For a foodie, not being able to eat the delicacies they really want to eat was the same as when a smoker was addicted to cigarettes and had nothing to smoke. Oh, no, it was too light. It should be when the addict wasn't addicted to drugs. Zhang Han ignored their expressions, but the little princess beside him could not bear to see them any longer. Looking at their pitiful expressions, she said in a small voice, Papa, why don't you give some to the big sisters? In an instant, hope rose in the eyes of Liang Mengkai, Yu King, and the others. They knew that Zhang Han cared a lot about Meng Meng. The little princess asked, I wonder if Zhang Han will agree to it. At this moment, Liang Mengkai and the other two were extremely nervous, to the point where Zhao Du felt that the nervousness they were feeling right now was even more intense than when he was applying for a job. Facing Meng Meng's words, Zhang Han muttered to himself, 1 second, 2 seconds. Amidst the incomparably nervous atmosphere, finally, after 10 seconds, Zhang Han turned his head around and said, if you want to eat my dishes, that's fine, but you still have to follow the rules. Tell me about the rules. I agree. Liang Mengkai quickly nodded and replied, in my restaurant, only with a membership card can you eat the dishes I make. The price of the membership card, if it's the top 10, then it's a bit cheaper. 1 million apiece, and one membership card can only be used by one person. Zhang Han thought for a while and said, since Meng Meng had spoken, Zhang Han could make an exception. Since he made an exception, there must be a rule. Originally, Zhang Han planned to make a membership that was at least 10 million or more, but since Liang Mengkai and the other two were being respectful to him, then he would give them some face. The moment he said this, everyone was stunned. A 1 million membership card wasn't something that could be found everywhere, but Liang Mengkai, who had experienced high-end clubs, felt that it was worth it. However, 1 million was quite a sum for Yu King and Zhao Du. After working for a few years, the two of them had saved up to around 3 million, and if they were to spend a third of it in one go, their hearts would inevitably ache. But after considering for less than 2 seconds, when they saw the few dishes on Zhang Han's table, Their eyes became resolute. Okay, I want a membership card, I want the first one. Liang Mengkai's reaction was the fastest. She quickly responded and stood up before quickly walking towards the kitchen counter. She looked back and forth between the egg fried rice and the normal rice before deciding to eat rice and vegetables. After scooping some rice, Liang Mengkai brought the plate to Zhang Han and imitated him and said with a pout, "Boss, give it a try, give it a try." Zhang Han sighed in his heart, took her plate, and picked up some of every dish. Liang Mengkai was elated when he saw this. They looked at Meng Meng with gratitude and said, "Meng Meng, I really love you to death. You are so nice, thank you, cute little princess Meng Meng." Ha ha. Hearing the praises, Meng Meng laughed extremely happily, waved her small palm in a decent manner, and replied with her childish voice, "Don't mention it, little big sis." Liang Mengkai smiled as he carried the plate back. "Boss." The second voice followed closely behind. Yu Qingqing stood beside Zhang Han with the plate. "I want the second membership card. I also want to eat a little." "Yes." Zhang Han gave her some of the food. "Thank you." Yu Qingqing first thanked Zhang Han, then looked at Meng Meng and said, "Thank you, Meng Meng. Meng Meng is the most adorable." Humphrey. "No, you're welcome." Meng Meng waved his hand and replied, "Boss, big brother." Zhao Du also came. After they shared a few more dishes, Zhao Du thanked Meng Meng with satisfaction. Meng Meng's smile became even happier, and she felt like she was a little hero at this moment. However, she was truly a hero in their hearts. At the same time, the three of them came to understand that, as it turns out, Zhang Han cared about Meng Meng. In the future, rather than fawning on him, it would be better to fawn on him instead. They seemed to have found a way to deal with Zhang Han. Boss, I just want the fourth membership card. The food you make is really delicious." Zhao Feng brought the paper plate over. Helpless, Zhang Han could only give Zhao Feng some of the food, and after giving him some of the food, he only had less than a quarter of the food left. "Thank you, little princess Meng Meng." Zhao Feng smiled at Meng Meng, and carried the plate of food back, satisfied. "You're welcome, you're welcome." Meng Meng still happily waved her small arm, but when her clear and large eyes saw that only a few spicy dishes were left on the dining table, she immediately shook her head. Meng Meng was startled, his mouth pouting as he said, You're really impolite. There's only so little left." Zhao Feng's facial muscles trembled when he heard this. The dishes were split among the four of them, and it seemed like he got the least amount. "Eat quickly, Meng Meng." Zhang Han laughed and shook his head, then said, "I don't see much, but Meng Meng's appetite is relatively low. It's more than enough." "Yes, dinner." Meng Meng continued to eat. Zhang Han did not touch his chopsticks, but went to the kitchen counter to scoop up a bowl of egg-fried rice and brought it back. After eating for a while, there were only a few dishes left. Meng Meng used her chopsticks to pick up the last piece of red braised eggplant, and looked at it for 2 seconds, her big eyes telling him that she really wanted to eat it. But in the end, she still reached her chopsticks towards Zhang Han's bowl. "Papa, you eat." Meng Meng said with her childish voice. "Daddy is almost full." "Meng Meng, eat." Zhang Han laughed softly as he used his chopsticks to pick up the red braised eggplant and placed it near Meng Meng's mouth. It was obvious that she felt Meng Meng had swallowed his saliva, but she curled her lips and said in a small determined voice, "MNHMPH, Papa will eat it. Papa will eat it." Zhang Han's heart trembled at this moment. He didn't say anything, but his heart felt a little sour. Fatherly love was great, but at the same time, the love of a child was also deep. Meng Meng was only 3 years old, so the love he subconsciously expressed made Zhang Han's heart feel soft. Zhang Han took the eggplant, and opened his mouth to bite about a quarter of the eggplant. It's pretty good. Daddy has already eaten it. Eat these, Meng Meng's." Zhang Han placed the remaining third into Meng Meng's small bowl. Meng Meng likes to eat. Papa is the best. This time, Meng Meng did not reject and started to eat with gusto, while they enjoyed the taste buds. They also felt a little guilty. After all, they had split up Meng Meng's dishes, but at the same time, if they hadn't split up, such a cozy scene wouldn't have happened. So the emotions of these people were a little complicated. The reason why they did not think at all was because there weren't many dishes cooked by Zhang Han, nor did they think that they had the right to eat the dishes that they had spent $1 million on. Not only them, Zhao Feng's expression also changed. His daughter in his heart. It's a weakness, and at the same time, it's a reverse scale. Zhao Feng muttered in his heart. He had felt Zhang Han's casual personality, and felt that even if he offended Zhang Han, he would be fine. But if he messed with Meng Meng, then something would definitely happen. It had to be said that Zhao Feng saw things from a deeper angle than others. He didn't think too much about it. He decided to enjoy the delicacies first. When they had their first mouthful of rice, they suddenly realized that the rice in the restaurant was so fragrant. This fragrance was truly an unparalleled enjoyment of taste buds. Soft, tender, fragrant, everything had to be enjoyed. Even if they were given only rice to eat, they would probably still eat happily. The four of them did not have many dishes, so their actions were similar. They all first savored a small mouthful of each of the 3 dishes. However, when they ate the first fried tomato and egg, they were stunned. What's going on? Apostrophe. Even a normal fried egg and tomato is so tasty. Apostrophe. I'm finished. I won't be able to leave this restaurant in the future. What should I do? Apostrophe. Dot. The 4 of them carried 10,000 bullet screenness in their hearts and then tasted the beans and stewed potatoes and the braised eggplant. Afterwards, they wanted to control their pace and eat slowly, but they found that their hand speed had unknowingly increased by a lot. As they ate mouthful after mouthful, they suddenly realized that all their rice and vegetables were gone. Gone? Liang Mengkai looked at the empty plate of food and said with a somewhat dejected tone. She felt that she was only 70% full. He could even eat a bowl of rice. I haven't eaten my fill. Yu Qingqing pursed his lips, felt the remaining fragrance in his mouth, and was unable to control himself for a long time. Sigh. Zhao Du only let out a light sigh to express his unsatisfied heart. Zhao Feng, on the other hand, did not make any movements, and only silently picked up the paper cup to taste the milk. From his gaze, it was obvious that he was also sighing at the deliciousness of the food. While these people were indulging in their fantasies, 2 more guests arrived at the restaurant. A man and a woman, both in their early 20s. The man had dyed blonde hair, dressed in famous clothing, with a somewhat arrogant expression. The woman had a good appearance, was tall, but she was inferior to Liang Mengkai. Boss, give me 2 servings of your 288 servings of egg fried rice. The blonde youth's tone was not very good. There was a hint of disdain in his tone, as if he was very dissatisfied with the price of the egg fried rice. The rice is on the counter and the paper plate is on the side. Go and serve it yourself. Zhang Han replied. What did you say? The blonde youth frowned and said in a cold tone, you want us to serve our own food? Is this how you do business? Chapter 55. The Story of Zhao Feng. His words made the woman beside him feel a bit embarrassed. She looked at the man and said, Dong Heng, the rules of the restaurant has nothing to do with you. Don't be so rude when you talk. Am I rude? Little king, we are guests. Isn't that we are guest god for the service staff? Actually, this is my first time that I saw customers served their own food. What kind of attitude is this? I think I need to complain to the Consumer Association. The man sneered, and said to Zhang Han. Oh. Zhang Han's expression did not change in the slightest. Then he replied indifferently, then go and file a complaint. After finished speaking, Zhang Han carried Meng Meng and walked to the sofa. Aisle? Little king, look at his attitude. The blonde man's face was sullen. Before his voice had died away, Liang Mengkai said coldly, what attitude is this? The price is showed at the entrance, and the rules are always there. If you don't want to eat, then please leave. Do not make a ruckus here. That's right. The boss's food isn't prepared for any mortal. If you felt unsatisfied, then go out. Zhao Du rolled his eyes at the golden-haired man as he spoke in a weird tone. Ha ha. The man sneered and said, I think you guys are the ones who should be entrusted with this task. What is it? Was it a black shop? Dong Heng, stop talking. The woman beside him frowned and said, we're here to have meals. If you don't want to eat with me, then leave by yourself. I didn't mean that. The golden-haired man shook his head and said, I just don't like the service here. It's fine if you set a higher price, but if the service isn't good, then what is it? His words were obviously meant for Zhang Han, but Zhang Han did not plan to bother with this pretentious bastard. Zhang Han ignored him, but there were people who paid attention to him. After Zhao Feng reluctantly drank the last mouthful of milk, he stood up and walked towards the golden-haired man. When the golden-haired man saw Zhao Feng, his eyes stared with a stupefied expression on his face. It was clear that he recognized Zhao Feng. Eat some ending. Zhao Feng walked in front of the golden-haired man. He did not have much expression on his face, only 2 words coming out of his mouth. Yes, yes. Brother Feng, why are you here? The golden-haired man's expression turned bitter. If you want to eat, then it's good. My table is empty, clean it up and sit there. Zhao Feng gazed at him a few times, and said, also, from now on, when you come here, you'd better be quiet. Yes, I understand. The golden-haired man hurriedly nodded. The golden-haired man was also a member in Yong Club. As his family started a small company, he could be considered a rich second generation. They occasionally treated everyone. Zhao Feng met this guy for a few times when he came to the New Moon Bay. He wanted to curry favor with Zhao Feng, but Zhao Feng did not care about it. Thus every time he met Zhao Feng, he would be as if he was a mouse seeing a cat. After Zhao Feng finished speaking, he did not bother to pay any more attention to him. He took his own cup and went to the kitchen to pour another cup of milk, throwing the duster to the golden-haired man when leaving. Would you mind if I sit here? Zhao Feng said as he pointed to the empty seat in front of Zhao Du. No one is here. Take a seat. Zhao Du replied. His behaviors had left a good impression on Zhao Feng. What was the source of such goodwill? That is, to speak for the restaurant and to work for the restaurant. There was no doubt that Zhao Du was a protector for Zhang Han's restaurant. On the other side of the table, 4 people were leisurely drinking milk. At the furthest table, a blonde young man and a tall woman were eating egg fried rice at a fast pace. Normally, if they had had something delicious, they would praise them a little. But at this moment, Zhang Han's egg fried rice had already made them forget their words, and they were completely immersed in it, unable to extricate themselves. As he ate, the golden-haired man's face flashed with a hint of apology. He seemed to be saying, the food that the boss cooks is so delicious, but I behaved so badly just now, I really shouldn't. However, at this moment, no one paid any attention to them. Boss. Seeing that Zhang Han had cleaned up the big dining table, Liang Mengkai immediately said, as your first member, can I order a piano piece? Oh? Zhang Han glanced at her and nodded. All right. Then I want the piano music at night. Liang Mengkai said with a smile. Zhang Han nodded slightly and carried Meng who was on the sofa. Let's go and play the piano. Ugh. It's not us, but it's Papa playing. Papa, when can Meng play the piano? Meng asked with her child's tone. Meng is so smart. You could play it after a couple of lessons in the future. Zhang Han chuckled. Is Meng very smart? Meng's eyes lit up, and said happily, how smart is that, eh? Zhang Han muttered to himself for a while and replied, Meng is the most intelligent little princess of all the realms. All the realms. What is it? Meng asked curiously. It means in all the worlds. Meng is the smartest. Zhang Han gave a simple explanation. Ha ha. Oh? Meng kisses Zhang Han on his cheek for a few times, and started to giggle. The little princess really likes Papa praising her. Zhang Han placed Meng on the small sofa, then sat down and opened the lid. Give me a piano piece for my lovely Meng. Zhang Han chuckled, and kept silent for 10 seconds. Under the gaze of Liang Mengkai and the others, Zhang Han's hand suddenly moved. The sound of the piano began to move the heartstrings of the crowd. Liang Mengkai looked at Zhang Han's body from the side as she was in a daze. She felt that the piano pieces that Zhang Han was playing would always have a certain charm to them, as if it was the kind of song that would give rise to feelings. This was a sort of state. Even Zhao Feng's pupils became a little blurry, his expression still calm. However, his heart followed the rhythm of the piano piece and thought back to his experiences. He could have had a good life, a good career, but when he made his move that time, everything was just a dream. A comrade of his, and his best brother, had been in a trance during a besieging mission against the drug lords, which had resulted in being shot. Lying in Zhao Feng's embrace, he slowly told Zhao Feng about what had happened. It turned out that on the day of the mission, his family was going to receive a group of uninvited guests. That group of people were from the usury company, and his wife's father had borrowed money from them once, but after repaying them the money, the company did something about it. He had prepared a leave of absence report, but who would have thought that the final battle with the drug lord would begin? Military orders were like mountains, and he gave up on the idea of returning immediately, intending to rush back through the night after his mission ended. But he did not manage to hold on, and before dying, he asked Zhao Feng to help him with this task. However, in the middle of the night, when Zhao Feng arrived at his comrade's home, his wife died on her bed. Zhao Feng had really gone crazy at that time and went to the lending company by himself. The boss smiled sinisterly and said that he would send people to visit his comrades' homes even if he didn't want to. His lending company was also protected by the law. There was no fear, and only these 4 words could describe the boss. But Zhao Feng did not care about that, and continued punching the boss until he was out of breath. It was also because of this that he ruined Zhao Feng's life. If it wasn't for Tang Zan committing heinous acts, and if it wasn't for various reasons, he would have to spend the rest of his life in prison. Even if he came out now, he had to do something very dangerous. After all, that Tang Zan was cautious and ruthless in his actions, so it was best not to doubt that he was a brainless big brother. Was that attack worth it? Sometimes, Zhao Feng would ask himself as well, but after that, he would lightly shake his head and say, "It's worth it." If I were to give him another chance, he would definitely hit me a few more times. The melodious music quietly ended when Zhao Feng was deep in his thoughts. Playing another song. What do you want to hear? Zhang Han turned slightly to look at Liang Mengkai and the others, and then asked, "Canon variations, you talked about before?" Liang Mengkai hurriedly replied, "Yes." Zhang Han nodded slightly. When he was ready to play, the blonde man opened his mouth. "That, boss. We would like to have another serving." "Go and enjoy it yourself." Zhang Han replied. Okay. At this time, the golden-haired man was already extremely warm and polite. It was not only because of Zhao Feng, but also because he was a foodie too. As the golden-haired man was carrying 2 paper plates to the kitchen counter, a cheerful and rhythmic canon variation began to play. The boss plays the piano so well. He is truly mysterious. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. After the piano piece, Zhang Han put down the lid. Playing 2 songs at the same time, Zhang Han felt that it was enough. But after putting him down, Meng became a little anxious. She stretched out her arm and said, "Papa, don't put it down. Meng still wants to play it." "Oh, okay. Here, Dad will teach you how to play." Zhang Han hurriedly opened the lid of the piano once again. After embracing Meng, he began to teach Meng how to play the piano. "Here, press this button first, then this one, then this one, and then this one. Also, this one. It'll be nice if we just connect it together. Try it, ha. This. Meng happily used 2 small fingers to dim down. Zhang Han had taught Meng a song that was very simple yet pleasant to listen to. Meng's memory was very good, so she followed the sequence and played it well. "Daddy will press the button for you together, then Meng will sing." "Okay." After learning for a while, Zhang Han reached out his hand, gently grabbed the little princess finger, and prepared to play it. Twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Ha ha. Meng Meng was so happy to play the piano and sing in the arms of Papa. By the side of the window, Liang Mengkai and the others watched quietly. Even the golden-haired man and the tall girl who had finished eating did not interrupt this heartwarming scene. Chapter 56. Walk on Antique Street. After half an hour, when Meng Meng was tired from pressing the button, he placed the little princess on the sofa and watched TV. Boss, check please, Liang Mengkai said as she took the lead and walked to the front of the counter. How much is the meal? Liang Mengkai asked curiously. Ordinary household dishes are 200 apiece, and meat is 400 apiece. Zhang Han muttered to himself for a moment before replying. Okay, 600 yuan for the 3 dishes, 100 yuan for milk, 300 yuan for egg fried rice, exactly 1000 yuan. Oh, and a 1,000,000 yuan membership fee. A total of 1,001,000 yuan. Liang Mengkai took out her own mobile phone and fiddled with it, taking the bank card from Zhang Han. Boss, when will we be able to eat meat dishes? Liang Mengkai asked somewhat curiously. In a few days. Zhang Han replied. Indeed, after a period of time. Although suckling pigs and calves could be eaten early, they had just arrived at Mount New Moon, so they had to live there for a while to improve the quality of their meat. Yu Qingqing paid the bill and straightforwardly transferred 1,001,000 yuan. Hey, boss, I'm fascinated by your food. It seems that I need to earn a lot of money in the future before I can come and eat your food. Zhao Du sighed with emotion, and painfully transferred a third of his assets to another bank. It's delicious. Zhao Feng gave a simple praise and happily transferred the money. Liang Mengkai walked towards the door and suddenly remembered something. She turned to Zhang Han and said, oh yeah, boss, we have a member. Should we have a VIP card? Yes, I'll find someone to do it tonight. Zhang Han thought and replied. Okay, got it. Bye boss. Goodbye cute Princess Meng Meng. Liang Mengkai smiled sweetly and waved her hands twice. Sis, goodbye. Meng Meng waved her hands on the sofa. Goodbye, boss. Goodbye, Meng Meng. Yu Qingqing waved her hand. See you, Meng Meng. Zhao Du waved his hand. Bye bye. Zhao Feng nodded. After they left, the golden-haired man and his female companion walked over. There are a total of 4 servings of egg fried rice and 4 cups of milk. I would also like to calculate the total amount based on the number of servings. Here is 1,600 yuan. The blonde man handed the money over. Yes. Zhang Han nodded his head indifferently. He took the bill and placed it in the drawer. What do it mean by membership card here? Is it a 1,000,000 yuan deposit? The blonde youth could not help but ask. No. Zhang Han shook his head and said, 1,000,000 yuan is just the membership fee. With a membership card, you can eat the dishes I make, but the money for dishes will be additional. 1,000,000 yuan. For the membership cards. The tall woman's face changed as she stuck out her tongue. So expensive. Yes, that. We're leaving too. Goodbye. The golden-haired youth's pocket money was around 1.89 million a year, and it was even given on a monthly basis. It wasn't enough for him to buy a membership card, so he decided to leave. Thinking about how they just bought the membership card, the golden-haired man suddenly felt like he was a fake rich second generation. However, within a few days, the golden-haired man couldn't resist the temptation and began to raise money to buy a membership card. Of course, that was a story for the future. Just as the golden-haired youth left, Liang Mengkai and the other 2 opened the door and walked in. Sorry, I forgot to clear away. Liang Mengkai grinned. The 3 of them washed the tableware and put it in the cupboard. Zhao Du even cleaned up the table of the golden-haired youth. They sat in Yu Qingqing's Volkswagen. I finally know what a true delicacy is. I have truly let down my tongue before. Liang Mengkai posted a message on her WeChat saying that it was accompanied by a photo of him outside the Meng Meng's leisure restaurant. Naturally, the beauty's attention was not low and several comments were immediately sent out. Tiger, oh, What kind of delicacy did beautiful Liang discover? Song Kiki actually said that. Your mouth is famous for cleverness. It seems like this restaurant is great. Society. The moment I opened my mouth, I knew it was an old world, Meng's restaurant. Their food must be also adorable. Liang Hao asked, little sister, did you eat delicious food? It makes you so happy. To her brother's comment, Liang Mengkai laughed and replied, but it's delicious, and it will be a lifelong regret if you don't have a try. Brother, wait for you to come, I'll treat you. Liang Hao, ha, okay. I can't wait to go. What kind of dinner are you eating? Liang Mengkai said, egg fried rice, milk, a little egg and fried tomatoes, beans and stewed potatoes, and braised eggplant. Society, puff, spurt blood, isn't this just a regular dish? You can even do it yourself. Liang Mengkai, what do you know? Boss's dish is unique in heaven and earth. One egg fried rice costs 280 yuan. 1 cup of milk costs 80 yuan. Do you know how much the membership card will cost? 1 million, and only you have a membership card, you can eat the dishes that the boss made himself. HMPH. Society. Little did she know that Zhang Han had already changed the price. Since the start of the competition, Zhang Han had not received a single serving of the egg fried rice. Since then, he had only received a maximum of 208 servings. So he might as well change the price so that he did not feel like giving a tip every time. Zhang Han would often tip others, but he did not like others to tip him, so he did not need it himself. But what Zhang Han did not know was that, not long after, the several hundred yuan that was spent in the dining hall also turned into smithereens. 1 to 10 membership cards, each priced at 1 million, 20 membership cards at 10 million. If you have membership cards, you are eligible to eat the day's dishes. Household dishes, vegetables cost 200 yuan, a little, meat cost 400, a little. After writing this, Zhang Han looked at it for a bit. After confirming that there were no errors, he returned to the dining hall and prepared to pack up with Meng and order a membership card. Zhao Du also posted a similar message on his WeChat moment. His WeChat friends were a lot more, almost full of people. After all, he was the deputy director of the media company back then. There were a lot of people who paid attention to him. After he sent out his WeChat moment, the number of comments immediately exceeded 50, which was much more than Liang Mengkai. There was also the golden-haired man and the tall lady. They were all showing off their friends, but what they said was that they discovered a particularly tasty restaurant. However, Zhao Feng didn't do such a thing. He only returned to the company quietly and did what he needed to do normally. With the promotion of a few people in the friends circle, Zhang Han's restaurant would probably welcome a new batch of customers tomorrow. At the same time, inside Xian's house, why isn't he replying yet? Li Fan was already starting to crumble. From the very beginning, he instantly refreshed his web page in 2 seconds and turned it into a minute later, and then in 10 minutes. He sat in front of his computer until now, staring at the same thing for a few hours. He didn't leave a number. If he doesn't reply by the 13th, then should I sing this song or not? Sigh, if I can't sing it, then I will feel very upset. Xian shook his head lightly at the side. Xian had to go to the Linhai city to prepare for the concert on the 15th. On the 7th day, if Mr. Han Yang did not reply and the song was not well discussed, he would not be able to feel at ease. Hurry up and reply, big brother, I'm begging you. Li Fan laughed bitterly as he looked at the screen and muttered. Zhang Han and Meng had got well prepared and were going to the Central District's Lotus Alley to make their membership cards. There was also an antique street there. Zhang Han planned to go there and take a look. After driving for around half an hour, Zhang Han arrived at the Central Ring Road. First, he went to a rather high-end membership card shop. After communicating with the waiter for a while, Zhang Han decided on the style of the membership card. What he wanted was a membership card made out of metal, with Zhang Han's signboard in front. A cartoon image of Meng with the words Meng's Leisure Restaurant written on the side. There were 120 numbers in circles. and on the back of the card there was carved a blooming lotus. However, Zhang Han chose the best material for the metal card, and the white words required a platinum material. On the four corners of the membership card, Zhang Han also needed to insert a diamond. Thus, a membership card costed for 50,000. With 20 membership cards, Zhang Han had to pay 500,000 as a deposit, and the other half would be paid after delivery tomorrow. 20 membership cards costed 1,000,000 yuan, but Zhang Han was not lacking in money right now. He had just earned 4 million, adding the 400,000 yuan ago. Even if he spent 1 million, he would still have 3.4 million. Let's go and see if we can buy some good stuff. Zhang Han carried Meng Meng and walked towards the antique street. Let's go, we'll buy, we'll buy, we'll buy. Meng Meng had no resistance to shopping. No matter what it was, she would just buy it. Arriving at the antique market, there were numerous stalls lining the two sides of the street. There were porcelain, paintings, jade artifacts, and even miscellaneous items. Painting and calligraphy were Chinese drawing and handwriting. Jade artifacts were carved from jade, containing ancient jade and modern jade. There were many types of jade bracelets, beads, jade pendants, decorations, rings and so on. Miscellaneous items included bamboo, wood, teeth, horns, 4 treasures of the study, embroidery, copper items, and some items that could not be prepared for categorization such as decorations, bracelet, walnuts and so on. Hong Kong's antique market could be said to be renowned globally. Many collectors from different countries would buy the antiques auction, and there were a lot of people on this antique street. So many people, so many things. Papa, what are we going to buy? Meng Meng asked curiously as she looked around at her surroundings. Take a look around. I'll buy whatever you like. Zhang Han replied with a light smile. Carrying Meng Meng, Zhang Han walked inside as he started to use the treasure-sniffing nose on the vendor. Right now, he could use treasure-sniffing nose to cover an area of about a meter. Circulating his spirit energy, he only needed to sniff a few times before Zhang Han left the first booth. The stall owner's words were pleasant. This is a porcelain vase from the Tang dynasty. It costs 20,000 yuan. Young man, this bracelet is extraordinary. It is an authentic jade. If you want it, I can give it to you for a cheaper price. How much is it? 18,000. Young man, look at this pendant. It's pretty good. Hey, hey. Hey, why are you leaving? Chapter 57, Tao Bao. Zhang Han gave the second stall a few glances, and then headed over. The first stall did not have a single item that was real. Just 2 of them smelled a little better, but they were not some historical relic that the stall owner was talking about. The same was true for the second booth, the third, fourth, fifth. Along the way, there were roughly 40 to 50 stalls, but not a single one was genuine. Currently, Zhang Han had already used 2/3 of his spirit energy, so he did not plan to stroll around the small stalls and prepared to walk around the shops on both sides of the street. Not all of the goods in the store were real, and it could be said that there were very few real ones, but the possibility of the real ones was much higher than the ones outside. Other than a few small accessories that Meng Meng had picked up, there were no other gains at the stall. They walked into a shop called the Wangking Antique. The store was relatively large, and there were quite a few customers inside as well. They were all sizing up the items on the shelves. Jade is made from the essence of the stone and is combined with craftsmanship, so it is called Hessian jade. Young miss, this Hessian jade bracelet is lovely, and can be considered as the best gift. An old man smiled and said to a ponytailed woman of about 24 to 25 years of age. The grey-haired old man was the shop owner of the Evergreen Ancient Store. His name was Gian Ming, and the ponytail woman was the daughter of the Evergreen Group's chairman, Lin Xu. Of course, the Wangking Group was a group that focused on the old industry. They had the Wangking Antique Store, Wangking Jewelry Store, and other related industries. Ling's would come here this time because it was the birthday of an elder in the corporation. She had come to choose a birthday present. This is not bad. Elder Qian, then could this be a bit cheap? Lingz said somewhat hesitantly, neither. Qian Ming shook his head and said, jade has spiritual nature, and is non-affiliated with others. It is soft and smooth, just like a baby's skin, instantly giving off resonance with others. The jade color is smooth, just like a quiet and elegant beauty. Qian Ming shook his head and said, chuffing. Lingz laughed and said, all right, then that's it. Little Liu, wrap this jade bracelet for eldest miss. Qian Ming said to a young man. Yes, sir. The man picked up the jade bracelet and retreated. Just then, Zhang Han held Meng, standing a few meters away and looking at the items on the shelves. Meng did not understand even after hearing Qian Ming's words and whispered into Zhang Han's ears, Papa. Then, what did the old grandpa say? Some knowledge about jade, which can be said to be nonsense. Zhang Han laughed and replied, then why does that old grandpa look so weird when he's speaking? The old man's words carried a bit of ancient wisdom. Adults might feel the words were refined, but the child wouldn't understand it well, especially since Meng grew up in North America. She was able to speak Mandarin fluently and efficiently. As for the words spoken by the old man, the little princess was a little confused. It's just a few words. Meng doesn't need to understand them right now. You will understand them in the future. Zhang Han laughed as he rubbed Meng's head. Oh. Meng nodded her head obediently. Suddenly her eyes saw a small jade fish 3 meters away from the cabinet. The fish was carved in a lively manner, and its tail had a small dot as a support point. Its head raised upwards, and there was a small pearl in its mouth. So beautiful. Meng imitated the shape of the fish's mouth and pouted with an adorable golden mouth. Her cute appearance made Lingz, who accidentally saw her, suddenly frozen. This little girl is so cute. Lingz praised from the bottom of her heart as she stared at Meng. Meng is the most beautiful. Zhang Han chuckled. Just as he said that, the jade fish suddenly fell towards Meng's direction. Huh? The old man, Qian Ming's gaze, swept between Xiaoyu and Meng a few times before he walked over and said with a smile, the candidate jade is inevitable. But the choice of jade is a coincidence. It seems that this piece of jade is fated to belong to this little girl. Is that so? Meng's eyes lit up as she chuckled and said, Papa, he said that there's fate between little fishy and me. Buy it then. Zhang Han laughed and shook his head. It didn't matter if the jade fell by accident or not. It didn't matter if the shop manager was deceiving him, since he could make Meng smile. He could buy it. What a beautiful girl. Lingz smiled and sized Meng up a few times, then looked at Zhang Han and laughed. Elder Qian, give this guest a 50% discount for the jade. All right. Qian Ming nodded. There's no need. Just as Zhang Han wanted to refuse, he tapped his forehead lightly and turned around to leave. In the end, Zhang Han paid a 50% discount on the jade and bought it for 80,000 gold. While packing, Zhang Han took the ancient jade and sniffed it lightly. Interesting. Zhang Han's eyes narrowed. This piece of jade looked like an ordinary ancient jade, but Zhang Han could smell a trace of other odors in the center of the jade. It was the unique aura of a treasure. However, this hint of smell could not be felt by Zhang Han, because he could only use the weak ability of the treasure-sniffing nose, and he would have to wait for his strength to increase in the future before he could use this ability. Using an early-stage chi cultivating stage to search for treasures was equivalent to physical labor. Zhang Han did not plan to do this. With the Yuan King tree here, he would be able to advance to the foundation stage in a year, and that would be the start of the treasure hunt. Furthermore, when he came out to make a membership card this time, he would take a stroll and find some treasures. Meng had brought him good luck. After exiting the door, Zhang Han carried Meng and walked toward the beginning of the street, planning to complete their stroll in the antique shop and then return home. Every time he entered a shop, Zhang Han would circulate his spirit energy and use the treasure-sniffing nose to smell around. But the reality was that there were antiques and no treasures in the shop. Very quickly, Zhang Han's spirit energy was almost used up. In the last third shop, finally, Zhang Han smelled the scent of a treasure. "How much is this?" Zhang Han said as he held out a rusty copper coin. 3,000. "I'll take it." Zhang Han smiled and paid for the copper coin. Zhang Han stopped shopping at the last two shops and headed straight towards the parking area. "Papa, the round thing you chose is so ugly," Meng said with her sweet voice. Although it is a little ugly, it is a good thing. Meng, sometimes ugly things can also be good things. Zhang Han laughed and said, "Ugly, good?" Meng did not understand. "Yeah, look. For example, that fire dragon fruit doesn't look too good, right? But it's eating pretty good. And the squid, and it looks ugly, but the grilled squid tastes good. And there are some people." When talking about people, Zhang Han's expression became stern, and said in a deep voice, "Some people are ugly, but they have a kind heart, and some people are beautiful with a venomous heart. So, Meng, when you meet boys in the future, no matter how beautiful they are, you cannot let them approach you. Do you understand?" No. That Mama is wonderful and kind. Papa is also very handsome and kind, Meng said as she blinked her bright and clear eyes. "Daddy's kindness is only towards Meng." Zhang Han laughed as he rubbed Meng's head. Zhang Han was not a bad person, but he was far from a kind person. In the cultivation world, where strength was respected and cruel, no one would show kindness for no reason, and no one would show mercy to the heavens and treat anyone else well. This was because you did not know when someone would stab you in the back. Of course, family love and friendship were universal in the cultivation world, and that kind of precaution was only used against those who were not close to him. "There's still Mama." Every time this happened, Meng would always say these words. In her heart, she hoped that the relationship between Papa and Mama was good. "Sure, and her." Zhang Han laughed as he shook his head. As he said that, Zhang Han walked to the front of the car, and called, "Zhang Han." Xian called out Zhang Han's name as usual. "Yes." Zhang Han replied as usual, but this time, Zhang Han knew to say one more sentence, and just as she was about to let out a light snort, Zhang Han asked, "How's the recording going, Humphrey?" On the other end of the phone, Xian still snorted lightly, but a smile still rose on her face. She took a deep breath and said, "There's still the last song. I can record it in 2 days. I'll be flying at 7 o'clock in the afternoon on the 10th, and we'll reach Hong Kong International Airport at 10 p.m. Why are you so careful?" Zhang Han pouted and muttered, "What did you say?" Xian's voice rose by 3 decibels, a cough. "I understand. I will bring Meng to pick you up at 10:30. Zhang Han replied, "What is it? You don't want to come and pick me up?" Xian asked. Zhang Han originally wanted to reply with "wasting my time." But when the words were just about to reach his mouth, Zhang Han looked at Meng who was blinking her large eyes as she looked at him and finally replied, "No, I'm very willing to work for you. I'll be there at the airport on time at 10. As expected, as he said these words, Meng's large eyes were filled with happiness. Of course, it was not only Meng who was happy. Xian also smiled slightly and asked, "How is Meng? What are you eating today?" "Household dishes, fried tomatoes with eggs, boiled potatoes with beans, and fried eggplant," Zhang Han replied. "Do you even know how to cook? Can you eat it?" "Don't touch Meng. Beans must be appropriately prepared," Xian said with worry. "If my customers were to hear your words, they would bombard you." Zhang Han smiled lightly. What kind of joke was this? In Meng's casual restaurant, a fan would come, and it was a loyal fan. Zhang Han did not doubt that if he were to exchange his membership cards for 100 yuan each, he would be robbed crazily. Chapter 58, A Treasure with Chicken Ribs. What is it? How many loyal customers are there already? Xian asked curiously. Yes, they eat 3 meals a day at my place. Zhang Han replied. Looks like you have some skills. Sitting at the back of the carriage, Zhang Han chatted with Xian for a while. In the end, Meng Meng was getting more anxious as she waited. She couldn't understand why Papa and Mama would spend so much time to talk each time. At Meng Meng's urging, Zhang Han handed the phone over to Meng Meng and drove towards New Moon Bay. After half an hour, Meng Meng reluctantly ended the call when she returned to the dining hall. In the bedroom on the second floor, after Zhang Han coaxed the little princess to sleep, he softly and slowly walked to the living room. He opened the small antique bag that he bought, took out the copper coin, and started to read it carefully. "It's time to see your true face." Zhang Han smiled slightly. Although the copper coin was stained with rust, it was a first-stage spirit treasure. It was likely that under this rust, there was a treasure that was like an unpolished jade. A green light surfaced in Zhang Han's eyes as he circulated his spirit energy in his fingers, forcing out a drop of fresh red blood, and dripped it onto the copper coin. "Refine," Zhang Han muttered softly. He held the copper coin tightly between his thumb and forefinger and began refining the first stage of the spiritual treasures. Waves of extremely dim multicolored light flickered and leapt about on his fingers. This was also the reason why Zhang Han's strength was relatively low. It was because the chi refining stage did not have any spiritual awareness to use. If he had spirit sense, he could directly use it to refine the treasure. Now, Zhang Han could only use his blood as a medium and use it to improve the richness by continuously pouring spirit energy into it. It had to be known that spiritual awareness was the most basic energy. As one's cultivation level increased, spiritual awareness would gradually transform into a consciousness. With spiritual awareness, it would have quite a lot of attacking power and could use more and more functions. It took Zhang Han an entire hour to successfully refine the pellet. However, after obtaining the information on the treasure, Zhang Han did not rejoice at their success. When he opened his eyes, he spat out a few words in disdain. "So trashy." Zhang Han took the copper coin and looked at it. The rust on the copper coin had disappeared entirely, and what replaced it was a severe bronze coin. However, its capabilities, in Zhang Han's opinion, were too weak. Even he used the word trash to describe it. Its function is to, for example, if Zhang Han wanted to, he could immediately change his appearance to Xian or someone else. This treasure formed a light wave on the surface of a person's body, using transformation to confuse them. But for Zhang Han, there was no increase in his strength at all, no function he desired at all. This was just a useless treasure. They didn't know that if these treasures were found out by the assassins, they would be called saint artifacts. The fact that they could transform meant that they could freely enter the enemy's territory, which said that they were in an invincible position. However, it was useless in Zhang Han's eyes. He felt that he could only change Xian's outer appearance when his family was out shopping, and the distance between the copper coin and the spellcaster was not more than 30 meters. "What lousy thing is this?" Zhang Han casually threw the copper coin on the tea table. Picking up the little fish that Meng Meng had set her eyes on, he smelt it with the treasure-sniffing nose. It was still the same situation. The smell was ancient jade, but there was something strange in the center of the jade. "What is it?" Zhang Han muttered to himself as his fingers pinched the jade pearl on the fish's mouth. Crack! As the spiritual energy moved through his finger, it broke the bead that was on the fish's mouth. Zhang Han used the treasure-sniffing nose once again, and this time, he could smell the unique fragrance of a treasure. "So it's a jade fire dew." Zhang Han's eyes revealed a hint of understanding. This ancient jade was yang jade, and in a hot environment, it could produce jade fire dew. It was just like how black hair and Nu had a chance to grow into Kobe beef. This jade fire dew had only been around for 100 years, so it could be considered a first-class spirit treasure, which was very close to the level of second-stage spirit treasure. Its energy was extraordinarily violent and could increase its strength a little, but Zhang Han did not plan to use it. Moreover, if Zhang Han did not use the chi refining stage, absorbing the jade fire dew would be okay, but the absorption process of the chi refining stage would not be as effective. Furthermore, the jade fire dew was not pure. "Put it in the thunder yang tree tomorrow." Zhang Han placed the small fish back in the bed, then went to his bedroom to rest. At night, he did not turn on his computer, which made everyone anxious, and that was Li Fan, who was standing in front of his computer. He had no idea how many emails he had sent to Han Yang, but all of them were like stones sent to the ocean. No news at all. This made him feel very helpless. When it was 12 o'clock, he went to rest with a headache. The next day, Meng woke up at 6 in the morning and took her to the Mount New Moon to absorb the jade-fired US from the ancient jade fish. Right now, there was no good target for it. Although Little Black could use it, it had already absorbed a trace of the 5th stage spirit treasure's essence and pure yang energy. If he were to incorporate jade-fired use, it would just be adding flowers to the flower pot. It would be such a waste. As for absorbing it, it would be too painful. So Zhang Han could only keep it for now. It made Zhang Han feel that it was the same as the copper coin, a somewhat useless thing. It was nearly 7 o'clock when he returned to the dining room. At this time, Liang Mengkai, Yu Qingqing, Zhao Du, and Zhao Feng were already standing in front of the dining hall, waiting. The two of them occasionally spoke a few words to Zhao Du. It was evident that they had come here out of curiosity because of Zhao Du's WeChat moments. Nice to meet you, boss, Meng. Liang Mengkai took the lead and greeted Zhang Han upon seeing him. Yes. Zhang Han nodded indifferently. Meng was much more enthusiastic as she raised her right hand and greeted. Hello, little sis. Boss, what are we eating today? Liang Mengkai asked again. Egg fried rice in the morning. Zhang Han answered as he opened the door. There's no dishes? Yu Qingqing asked. When she was about to sleep, she was a little hungry. When she closed her eyes, all she could see were the egg fried rice, the white rice and the 3 dishes. Immediately, Yu Qingqing felt her stomach rumbling with hunger, to the point that she couldn't take it anymore. Under normal circumstances and extreme hunger, Yu Qingqing would definitely eat all of the instant noodles in one go, and the food was very fragrant, but this time, while smelling the instant noodles, Yu Qingqing ate it woodenly, and then threw it out, feeling that the food was tasteless. Therefore, she poured all the noodles into the bowl. She couldn't eat any more and couldn't eat any more. However, she closed her eyes and recalled the figures of the egg fried rice again. In the end, Yu Qingqing struggled for a long time before finally falling asleep after counting the number of times. A bowl of egg fried rice. 2 bowls of egg fried rice. 1123 bowls of scrambled eggs. At this moment, Yu Qingqing looked at Zhang Han with an incredibly intimate gaze. At the same time, she had made up her mind that she would need to sleep early in the future, and if she got hungry while staying up, she would need to suffer for at least 2 hours before falling asleep. Facing Yu Qingqing's question, Zhang Han shook his head and said, "It's simpler in the morning. There are no dishes prepared, only egg fried rice and milk." Oh. Yu Qingqing nodded, her expression revealing her disappointment. She had been hungry for most of the night and wanted to eat more. The egg fried rice seemed not to be enough to satisfy a glutton like her. The more one ate, the more one would want. This was also a regular occurrence in the human world. Seeing Yu Qingqing's expression, Zhao Du rolled his eyes. When Zhang Han opened the door and walked in, he said, "Boss, your way of cooking is wrong. There is a saying, you have to eat well for breakfast, eat well for lunch, and eat less for dinner." There is a scientific basis for this statement. Breakfast is good for nutrition because the human body has not eaten for 10 hours in the morning. His stomach is empty, and his blood sugar level has also dropped to the point where he needs to eat. If he doesn't eat well, he will feel tired, irritable, and slow down. So he has to eat the best breakfast. Zhao Du acted as if he was an expert, and said while shaking his head, "You have to eat well for lunch because lunch is a transfer station, so you can only ensure enough energy supply. As for dinner, eating less won't burden your stomach and intestines, and it won't cause too much fat, and it's also because people don't have much activity at night." Zhao Du's series of words caused Liang Mengkai and the others to give him a thumbs up. Oh? Zhang Han slightly smiled, looked at him strangely, and said, "Then the amount of food for your dinner, that seems to be a bit out of line. Then I'll cook less for you guys from now on." "No!" Zhao Du cried in alarm, No, boss, big brother, just take what I just said for fart. That's right, he's farting. You King said anxiously. The original words are, breakfast, lunch, dinner must all be full, not even a single meal can be missed, and the most scientific one is even a midnight snack. Midnight snack. Zhang Han could not help but laugh. All right, the boss, we are just joking. Liang Mengkai lightly pushed you King and laughed. Whatever boss does, we will eat. Do you think that the boss will mistreat little Princess Meng? We are all borrowing the glory of little Princess Meng. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to eat egg fried rice. Yes. You King grinned and laughed. She was a little embarrassed and felt that her reaction was a little too extreme. She looked at Meng and laughed. I have to thank Meng properly. Yes, how could we have eaten such a delicious meal without Meng? Zhao Du agreed. Ha. You're welcome, you're welcome. Meng chuckled and waved her hands with them, looking very happy. Chapter 59, Exquisite Dishes. You're right. Zhang Han rubbed Meng's head and said, don't worry, in the future, the food will be more and better. And I guarantee it, there will be a lot of delicious foods that you have never eaten before. Really? Boss, can you tell me what's inside? Liang Mengkai and the rest's eyes lit up. Even the silent Zhao Feng was suddenly in high spirits and looked at Zhang Han with shining eyes. For example, fruits, crystal peaches, red heart apples, Xitagaba persimmon, 9 flavors immortal pears, and various kinds of meat you have not eaten before, such as delicious dark shadow wolf, dark demon tiger, and even azure dragon meat. You might have the chance to taste these in the future, but recently you can eat Kobe beef meat, Thai lake black swine meat, and dark pearl Mukin sheep. These meat are all over the 5A level. Zhang Han slowly said. In the vast universe, there were enough food ingredients, also there were plenty of delicious foods. It would take a long time. And in the future, when Zhang Han's cultivation level increases, he could still treat them a try or two. However, they only had a possibility, whereas Meng had to be able to eat it because as Zhang Han's daughter, her life had already begun to lengthen indefinitely. As for Liang Mengkai and the others, they were only mortals after all. If it took Zhang Han 100 years to leave Earth, then what were they waiting for? He had probably become a pile of bones long ago. Everyone listened until they were confused, not knowing what Zhang Han was talking about, but now, no matter if they were fruits or meat, they were all sorts, so they subconsciously thought that Zhang Han was talking about some imported good stuff, but in the end, they had heard of the Kobe beef meat, Thai lake black swines, and Wu's Mukin. Especially the last sentence that surpassed the 5A grade meat. There's even meat beyond the 5A rank. Liang Mengkai's small mouth gaped open, as she said with some surprise. Forget about 5A, there are even those that have surpassed 10A. Zhang Han chuckled. Wah! Then, when will we be able to eat meat? Yu King said excitedly. You are all members of the restaurant. I will cook for Meng. And you all have your share, so don't worry. Zhang Han shook his head and said, Okay. Then what do we eat in the morning? Yu King asked again. Egg fried rice. Zhang Han replied. His words were like a bucket of cold water thrown over their heads, bringing them back to their senses. Just now, they had all been lost in their endless reverie. They had been filled with hunger and thirst for the plum blossom. Anyone could see the anticipation in their eyes. Director Zhou, this boss knows how to trick people. Your eyes are turning green from talking about it. The two people who came with Zhao Du whispered. Yeah. His words are too godly. Is the food here really that good? Isn't it just egg fried rice? I often eat it. It seems that every dish has the same taste. The egg fried rice here is excellent. I can't possibly taste something else, can I? This person did not believe him from the start. However, when he tasted the first mouthful of egg fried rice, his expression completely changed. It was as if he was worshipping someone with incomparable respect. He quickly finished up the egg fried rice, then asked for a second serving. After that, He also asked for a second serving. This scene caused Meng Meng to be a little surprised, and she even whispered into Zhang Han's ear, "Papa, Papa, look, that little brother has eaten 3 servings." When Zhang Han saw this, he could not help but smile. He had seen people who could only dry 3 bowls of wine, but he had never seen anyone who could eat 3 bowls of egg fried rice. This person had eaten 3 servings in a row, but he didn't know that this record had been broken in just a few days by eating 4 meals in a row. After eating 3 servings of rice and drinking 2 cups of milk, the man burped and said with a face full of emotion, "This is not egg fried rice. It is simply divine. Heavens, I can taste the taste of life. Ah, what should I do? I still want to eat." "Don't f***ing eat it. Who's going to take responsibility if you push yourself to death?" his companion said snappily. He was not only trying to persuade him to eat less, but he was also muttering in his heart, "Damn it, I'm treating you to a meal." This guy is looking forward to death. 3 servings of rice and 2 cups of milk. How much money is that? The man paid the bill in heartache and left the restaurant sorrowfully. The reason why he felt sad was that he thought that he had to spend a lot of money to come here to eat. The most important thing was, the salary was not enough. He didn't even have money to eat. This was an intense thing to do. Liang Mengkai and the other 2 had only left after washing all the tableware, but when Zhao Feng saw this, he felt that he could already buy a set of tableware. After everyone left, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. Xian called them daily. After chatting with Zhang Han for a while, the 2 of them started to talk on the phone more. Sometimes, Xian would tell Zhang Han some exciting things about how to record a video, while Zhang Han would say to him some things about playing with Meng Meng. This kind of conversation allowed their relationship to improve by a lot. That kind of strange feeling began to melt away. It was just that this made Meng Meng a little unhappy, and they continued to argue. "Papa, may I Wang spoke to you?" As time passes, I have been talking with Meng Meng less and less. For the entire morning, Zhang Han accompanied the little princess to watch the cartoon show. After watching it for 2 hours, Zhang Han and Meng Meng started to paint and play again. "Papa, guess what I drew?" Meng Meng drew a face. It had a rough appearance and a distant face. Its eyes were 2 small dots, 2 of its nostrils were slightly big, and its mouth was a horizontal line. There were only 3 or 2 wavy strands of hair on its head. "Pigs," Zhang Han said in a hesitant tone. "Humphrey, he's not a pig." Meng Meng was surprised for a moment, and said with dissatisfaction, "Papa, take a closer look, see if it looks like Papa or not." Puff. A cough. The corner of Zhang Han's mouth twitched, and he invented suspicion as he said, "Then let me guess, huh?" Meng Meng seemed to be drawing. "It's me." "Eh? Really? Did Papa manage to see through it?" Meng Meng's eyes lit up. Isn't father that Meng Meng drew?" "Ha ha, it's wonderful. It looks just like Daddy." Zhang Han revealed a gentle and happy smile and said something that went against his heart. "Ha ha. Papa is already a handsome man." Receiving the praise of the Papa, Meng Meng was very happy. Amidst the noise, she drew another mama beside Papa. Looking at Xian, whose face was longer than a donkey and had eyes like sesame seeds, Zhang Han chuckled. He was afraid that if Xian saw it, her expression would be interesting. After drawing the Papa and Mama, Meng Meng wanted to bring herself again. Meng Meng happily finished drawing and was stunned. Looking at her drawing, she was not satisfied at all. Then she pouted and said, "I don't look like it. This doesn't look like Meng Meng." In her heart, Meng Meng should be cute just like the picture on the restaurant board. "Come on, the father will draw a Meng Meng." Zhang Han quickly picked up his pen to save the situation. The entire morning passed with laughter and cheers. Near midnight, the restaurant welcomed 2 groups of customers. The first batch was from the blonde Sun Dongying who came last time. This time, he drove a BMW Z4 and brought another great beauty over. From the looks of it, this brat should be an insane demon that was flirting with girls. "Good afternoon, boss." Sun Donging greeted passionately. He suddenly remembered that in this restaurant, the owner might not buy everything. He had to get rid of Meng Meng, so he quickly looked at Meng Meng, and smiled even more enthusiastically. "Good afternoon, little Princess Meng Meng." HMPH, all right. Meng Meng winked at Ming Che with her big eyes. The little princess still remembered how he made a ruckus in the dining hall. Wow, what a cute northern nose. The beauty beside Sun Donging said in an exaggerated manner. Of course, the boss is amazing. His daughter is even better. Let's sit over here. The round table belongs to the boss and Meng Meng. Sun Donging brought the beauty to a small table at the side of the window and sat down. Just these 3 small tables are the place for customers? The beauty pursed her lips in disbelief. It's good enough to have a meal. After you finish eating, you will know. Even if you eat while standing, there will still be people willing to eat. Zhang Han's egg fried rice entirely subdued Sun Donging. He looked like a loyal fan of Zhang Han. Boss, when are we going to cook? Sun Donging felt a little hungry, so he asked. Zhang Han looked at the time. It was only 11:40, so he replied, "Wait a moment, I'll cook the rice first." "All right." Sun Donging replied. This time, Zhang Han cooked less. 6 cups of rice. When it was time to cook, Zhang Han started to mix the noodles. Mount New Moon's noodles and rice were also of the same standard. White rice was tasty and white bread were equally attractive. The steamed bread with good quality noodles was already very fragrant. If one bit the cooked food with aromatic and robust taste, then the Mount New Moon, the best white flour in the world, would have to conquer a large number of people. There were even more ways to make pasta: steamed buns, rolls, xiao, buns, noodles, bread, cakes, and so on. There were too many things that could be done. However, today, at noon, Zhang Han didn't plan to steam the steamed bun. There was knowledge to steamed bun, and steamed bun needed noodles so that it might have a sour taste after a long time, and after adding a lot of alkaline noodles, it would turn yellow. It would also have a slightly chemical taste. Zhang Han had never studied it before. There was only one way that he could do it, and that was to make dumplings. When Zhang Han was young, he had wrapped dumplings with his parents many times. At that time, his father rolled out the dough wrappings, his mother was in charge of covering the dough wrappings, and Zhang Han would make small round dough wrappings at the side. After a few tries, Zhang Han remembered the entire process of wrapping the dumplings, although he had forgotten about the details. But after checking for a while, Zhang Han understood clearly. Chapter 60, Making Dumplings. As they were talking, the restaurant welcomed another 2 groups of guests. The first group was 2 men. They entered the room and looked at them strangely. Their hearts were shocked by the high membership price. The second group was a woman in her 30s, carrying a bag. Her expression was very calm. After entering the room, she sat at a table in the corner, and took out her phone to play with it. Not even 2 minutes after them, Liang Mengkai and the other 2 arrived as scheduled. Ah! There's no space left. Entering the house, Liang Mengkai saw that there was no place left, so she looked at Zhang Han and asked, "Boss, there's no space left, what should we do?" Or else, Liang Mengkai wanted to say, "Why don't we also sit at the dining table and eat?" However, before she could finish speaking, Zhang Han had already answered, "Let's wait." Huh? Liang Mengkai's expression froze. Sigh. Then let's wait a bit. Next time, just come a little earlier. Yu Qingqing shook her head and sighed. "I'll go discuss it." Liang Mengkai rolled her eyes, said something and then walked towards Zhang Han who was busy working in the kitchen. "Noodle food? Boss, what's so delicious about cooking at noon?" Liang Mengkai asked. "Dumplings." Zhang Han replied. "I want to eat too." Liang Mengkai's eyes lit up. "You have your share?" Zhang Han nodded. Since the membership system was introduced, then Zhang Han would have more dishes in the future. He did not doubt that these people would be picky about their food. For example, Yu Qingqing did not like eating the leek. It was easy to handle, but after tasting it, one would know that the Mount New Moon did not grow food that were picky. What? Allergy? Sorry, There was no allergy about the things that the Mount New Moon grew. In other words, everything that was grown in the Mount New Moon was the best to fit people's tastes. What a joke! Under the nourishment of spirit water, spirit earth, and thunder yang tree, how could the things have grown to be simple? Boss, then where are we waiting? Why don't we sit at the dining table as well, or the little table over here? Liang Mengkai pointed to the round table and chair to the right of the sofa. No. Zhang Han immediately rejected her. If they were allowed to sit here, then there would be more and more members in the future. Could it be that everyone was sitting around in the house? Zhang Han would not allow that to happen. Then what should we do, boss? Liang Mengkai's expression became bitter. If it were any other time, if it were anyone else who repeatedly rejected Liang Mengkai like this, she would have already exploded. Don't forget, Liang Mengkai was a purebred second-generation purebred. Even though she is gentle, she still has a temper. However, in this restaurant, no matter how rich, how temperamental, and how willful you are, you will always behave yourself. Because if you aren't obedient, there was no food. Seeing that, Zhang Han muttered to himself, and Liang Mengkai felt that there was no chance for her to communicate with Zhang Han, so she looked at Meng, and whispered in her heart, Humphrey. A mean boss. If you don't agree, someone else will. After a few days of interaction, Liang Mengkai and the others had found out about Zhang Han's lifeline. Rather than trying to please him, it was better to satisfy Meng. If Meng spoke up for her, the owner would not refuse. As if Zhang Han had noticed her gaze and thoughts, he swept his eyes over the dining room, pointed to the two long cabinets outside the kitchen, and said, then you guys can throw those two cabinets out and go buy a few tables. Consider them your fixed seats as members. Huh? Liang Mengkai slightly froze for a moment, then said happily, all right. King, sissy, come quickly. Liang Mengkai immediately waved her hands towards her two companions. He, it's done. Let's throw these two cabinets away, then go buy tables and chairs. Liang Mengkai said while laughing. Sure thing. Zhao Du laughed, rolled up his sleeves and prepared to work. The cabinet was two large ones. One of them was about 2 meters long, and it was around 40 centimeters wide. Zhao Kai made this cabinet according to what he thought. It was used to store some ancient treasures. However, before the antique had even been placed, the cabinet had already died. From the kitchen to the small dining table in front of the window, about 4 meters in total, it was more than enough to set down 3 dining tables. 1, 2, 3, use your strength. Yu Qingqing instructed. With a push, Yu Qingqing was lifted, but on the other side, Liang Mengkai and Zhao Du did not raise either. The strength of a man and a woman couldn't even be compared to Yu Qingqing alone. This couldn't help but cause Yu Qingqing to feel a little discouraged. You two haven't eaten your fill. It's too heavy. Liang Mengkai pouted. She had clearly used all her strength, then looked at Zhao Du, and said snappily, calling you sissy, you are a sissy. You don't have any strength left. How could I do such menial work? Zhao Du said with a bit of grievance. A cough. What are you doing? At this time, a low voice sounded from the door. Turning his head, he realized that it was the late Zhao Feng. Yu Qingqing knew that this brat had some skills, so she quickly said, don't just stand there, quickly come and work. What is this? Zhao Feng looked at Zhang Han with some disbelief. Can't you see it's gone? Liang Mengkai answered, I was begging the boss for a long time before he agreed to leave this place for us so that we can set up our table. Oh. Zhao Feng nodded, and said, let me do it. Zhao Feng walked in front of Liang Mengkai as he said that, with one hand grabbing the cabinet. He and Yu Qingqing lifted it up and slowly walked out. At this moment, the people sitting at the small table by the window all stood up. Sun Dongying said, you want to carry the cabinet. Why didn't you say so earlier? Everyone should help out a little. We thought that you guys felt that the cabinet was slightly crooked and was adjusting its position. After he finished speaking, Sun Dongying and the others brought out the other cabinet. He placed it beside the trash can, where the old man, who just happened to clean up, was nearby. After seeing this scene, his smiling mouth couldn't close. It seemed like another batch of goods had come. Oh, he felt perfect will in Meng Meng's casual restaurant. Let's go and buy tables and chairs. We need to pick the better ones to demonstrate our VIP status. Liang Mengkai cheered as she urged Yu Qingqing. I'll go with you. Zhao Feng looked at Liang Mengkai and smiled slightly. He had a good impression of this girl, but it seemed that Liang Mengkai was not interested in her at all. What are you going to do? Liang Mengkai curled her lips. Zhao Feng was speechless and didn't know what to answer. I am a member of the restaurant. Let's go together. Zhao Du glanced at Zhao Feng and said, then drive the car behind us and follow us. All right. Zhao Feng nodded. Thus, they quickly drove towards the nearby shopping mall. 20 minutes later, they returned with 3 small grey rectangular tables, each for 4 people. The delivery man put down the table. Liang Mengkai and the other 2 sat at a table and waited silently. Zhao Feng, come, sit by my side. Zhao Du passionately patted the empty chair beside him and said, all right. Zhao Feng smiled and nodded. Usually, he would not bother with such things, and would not care about such things. But this time, Zhao Feng agreed. The reason was simple. He liked to look at Liang Mengkai. The chair beside Zhao Du was also facing Liang Mengkai. Honestly speaking, Zhao Feng really wanted to touch Liang Mengkai from the bottom of his heart, and so he longed for a sense of love. But it seemed that Liang Mengkai didn't like him at all, and this made Zhao Feng wonder again and again if he had not taken good care of his outer appearance. He remembered that when he went out, the other girls from the gang all praised him because he was handsome. Soon, the fragrant egg fried rice was served. Zhang Han directly placed it on the counter, and the customer served their food. This time, Liang Mengkai cooked about half of the egg fried rice and ate a portion of Zhao Du and Zhao Feng, because Liang Mengkai wanted to leave some food for the dumplings, and because Yu Qingqing didn't like leeks. It could even be said that she disliked leeks. Thus, she only planned to eat the egg fried rice. The others also began to serve their meals in succession. If one person were to serve their rice, they would not feel happy. However, since they were all obediently standing in line to serve their rice, everyone would think that it was nothing to them. Let's sit here too. Seeing that the table was getting higher, Sun Donging wanted to bring his new sister and sit. Hey, hey, hey. Liang Mengkai quickly stopped them. This is where the members sit. It's not like there's nowhere for you to go when you go back. Sun Donging's expression froze as he nodded and brought his female companion back to the small white dining table by the window. Zhao Feng smiled at Liang Mengkai, thinking that she was very interesting. What are you laughing at? Liang Mengkai glared at him. I think you're brave. Zhao Feng nodded his head lightly. What does it have to do with you? Eat your food. Liang Mengkai was not used to spoiling Zhao Feng at all, so Zhao Feng could not help but laugh bitterly to himself. He didn't have any ill intentions. The rice was still fragrant when they ate it, especially the few newcomers at the back. They did not look too good when they were eating it, and the praise was written all over their faces. As for Zhang Han, he boiled a pot of water and placed the panel on the round table. Papa, what are you doing? Meng Meng asked curiously. Daddy is going to make dumplings for you to eat. Zhang Han replied with a slight smile. Ugh. Then Meng Meng will help the papa. Meng Meng said as she ran over and sat on the small chair and looked at papa. Zhang Han placed some flour on the surface of the dough, as a precaution against the powder sticking to the mixture, splitting the dough into 3 pieces and transforming into 3 small dough. Then, he placed the 2 dough back into the basin. Zhang Han placed his finger in the center of the circle, and in a circle, he started to revolve it. Zhang Han's moderate strength pulled the loop, and gradually, the ring reached a certain degree of thickness, and when it was as thick as a thumb, Zhang Han cut it off. The next step was to use it to roll the dough wrappings. Zhang Han did not use his blade to cut the dough but used his hand to pull the dough directly. He needed to use even more strength to pull the dough, otherwise, the dough would be stretched out. Zhang Han's control of his energy could be said to be at the peak of perfection.